great to see everyone's faces, and I'm really excited for this session. So I'm gonna dive in. This meetup has been sort of we've um, put it together, the Who Feeds Bangalore project with the Circular Collective and the Coffee Miners project. So Who Feeds Bangalore is a collective sort of exploratory research project that's being at the moment facilitated by Elizabeth, Anusha, and myself, Shivani. Um, the project is to try and understand the different forces that shape the way the city of Bangalore eats, and very often that conversation does extend to other parts of the country or to food systems in other cities around the world. So although it's taken a pandemic for us to closely examine the way our ways with food, food in Bangalore and pretty much everywhere has been evolving since these places, these cities were born. And through this public participation project, our idea is to have collective dialogue, to have activities that are fueled by curiosity and conversation, to try and get a clearer idea of where systems and culture meet to feed our cities, and for us specifically Bangalore. Um, and like I said, this event is along with the Circular Collective. So I'm going to hand over to them in just a moment to to introduce themselves and share a little bit about what they do and set some context for the rest of the conversation. But before that, I just want to quickly take you through what we're going to be doing this evening. We were very keen that this not be like sort of a panel discussion thing where participants come and just passively listen. We wanted it to be something where we can all meet up, share thoughts, ask each other questions, hopefully all take away something from each other at the end of the session. So we're going to start off with a little bit of context setting from Shalini and Piyush about circularity and circular coffee marketplaces and their project. Then we'll hear from three speakers, Khushbu Gandhi, Pallav Patodia, and Chef Rahul Sharma, about ways in which they are running projects or doing work that looks at how we can build like circularity into the coffee value chain. Projects that they're doing where they feel how they feel the market is receiving this, things that they're learning along the way. And after that, we're going to dive into the Miro board. So you can feel free to open up the Miro board right now as well. We've created a bit of a visualization of what we think the coffee value chain looks like. And I'll take you through that in a little bit more detail when we get into that section of the meetup. And if you feel like there's anything that we could add on to that value chain, please feel free to plug that in. Again, we could do that a little bit more in detail later on, so I can tell you what is where and show you all the moving parts for that. And finally, we're going to sort of split up into breakout rooms and have these conversations. We've created this brainstorm activity for us to try and see what all the sort of different possibilities are for us out there to with innovation and policy and activities and projects that we can work into the coffee value chain to create circularity and move forward, and hopefully maybe take some of these conversations and projects and ideas forward amongst ourselves after all as well. So that's it from me for now. At this point, I'm going to hand over to Shalini and Piyush to please tell us a little bit about themselves and their work.
Hello, hi everyone. Thank you for taking out time today. We have close to 50 participants. I think this is something exceptional. So it's not only the four of us, between Shalini or five of us who are sort of discussing things around coffee. Now we have an entire family to discuss it today. And I'm so happy to, to share this journey with you. And I hope we could all have our coffee mugs with us today, but it's, I think, really late in the evening to really, have a coffee. But still, I think we can all sort of cherish the times that we have together. So very quickly, Shalini, could you please sort of share your screen and then we can take it up. I'm very happy to have Shalini also from our team. We both of us are working at the Circular Collective. I'll let Shalini, of course, maybe speak for a minute or so, and then I'll just take you through a couple of slides about the collective and why we are all here.
Just a moment. Yeah, are the slides visible?
They are, yes.
Great. So yeah, just I think a one-line introduction of myself before I hand it over back to you, Piyush. I'm actually a development sector professional, and I've been working across research and consulting roles in and out of Bangalore for the last 5+ years. And Piyush and I met a few months ago, brainstorming over ideas on circular economy and circular solutions across different sectors. And that's when, with different stuff that we had kind of curated and put together as part of the collective, we realized that we were super interested by the kind of innovations which were happening in the coffee space and the opportunity there. So we'll take you over what we found and what we see as the opportunity now.
Sure. Thank you, Shalini. So at the collective, so I started the Circular Collective last year. This is actually an extension of the work that I did as a German Chancellor Fellow, where I spent a year and a half in Germany and UK trying to really understand what does circular economy mean at a city context. I spent a considerable amount of time at Ellen MacArthur Foundation and University of Cambridge, really trying to figure out what does circular economy mean at a city level. So what does a circular Bangalore look like, or what does a circular New Delhi look like? So after I came back, I figured, of course, there is some amount of traction around this topic, but not really, the amount of content that we would like to have, around circular economy in this country. It was all around waste management. Of course, there's a lot of traction around plastics, but nothing really which sort of gives you an overview what does circular economy mean for an Indian context. There are a lot of examples from Western Europe and US, but I figured I am not really just going to figure out the West telling us to what this is circular economy and this is what you need to follow. So the whole notion was to really understand what does circular economy mean for a country like India. And I started this last year. Interestingly, during COVID times, it's a completely online run platform. We have published more than 60 articles till now. I'm very happy to see a lot of we have documented a lot of case studies which have been republished in various newspapers and magazines. Then we started our own newsletter, and we've got around 2,500 subscribers to our newsletters. The idea is to, really, it's the voice of the people of the country to try to understand what is circular economy. And I alone cannot do it. So we've got a lot of contributors. I'm happy that we've got people like Shalini, and I see a bunch of them now also part of this conversation. So we have weekly blogs, podcast series. We are also coming up with our own masterclass and course curriculum, because this is what a lot of people requested us to really embark upon. And one of the things that we wanted to really do at a city level was really to figure out, of course, how do we tackle this challenge of food waste. So between Shalini and I, we thought, what is it that is already segregated in our country or in our cities? And we figured, hey, coffee is something that does not really require to go to kitchen and really get some small specks of what could be food circularity. So we figured this is an interesting ecosystem to work with, and we spent a couple of months brainstorming what could a circular coffee space look like. And hence we are here with the Edible Issues and Who Feeds Bangalore, and with a bunch of you to really help us in this journey. I'm really happy to be part of such a conversation. So to really, I know, looking at, the backgrounds that everyone comes from, I'm not sure if everyone understands the concept of circular economy, but I would just take you through that for a couple of minutes, and hopefully that would just put the context as to why we are all here. So today we live in something known as a take, make, dispose economy. And essentially what that means is, say, if it's like a bottle, we really don't know where this bottle is coming from. I'm just using to get water, and then I would throw it after the end of the life when it gets old, and I really don't know where it's going to land. So essentially this take, make, dispose economy with complete, we have no clue what what sort of resources are there in such a product. I really don't know. Even if you're a recycler, you don't know whether it's aluminum, is it an alloy, is this made of plastic, because like there's no traction, there is no tracking control to understand such a product. So what that results is like huge landfills, and we jokingly say in New Delhi, if you really want to feel bit cooler, then you can go to these landfills, because they are really like a mountain, and hopefully they'll become ski spots very soon. And I'm sure all these cities that we are all living in, we have this bunch of landfills that are really mounting up. But what happens after these landfills fill up? So maybe if you can just click Shalini, like once. Yeah, so essentially we really don't know what to do with these materials, and essentially what we do is we are stuck with end of life products, and then we say, okay, now we have got this waste, what do we do? Half of it is burned for energies, the rest half of it, where people do not see any value, is in our landfill. But essentially, like this is all our waste, and we are all responsible for it as citizens. It's not that we are, like some other person is coming and throwing that trash. So we as citizens of this country are really responsible for the trash. And this is something that caught my attention. I really wanted to really do something around it, especially around food ecosystem, because we read right from our school books that every food article item could be like made as organic materials. But then still, if you go to a nearest landfill, you'll find bunch of it, like tons and tons of waste material, which is organic material, still lying in our landfills. Next slide, please, Shalini. So essentially, like the idea is, how do we make from this take, make, dispose, or take, make, waste economy into a circular economy? And essentially you can do that by understanding, like by understanding, can we restore some of these products, or can we regenerate? Imagine if this shirt that I'm wearing, if I throw it, if I throw it into a landfill, it regenerates, and it is sort of helpful for the environment. I don't know of any product currently in our ecosystem that is beneficial for the environment. So everything that we are consuming would just go into a landfill or would be incinerated. But imagine if your t-shirt, or like the masks that we are using every day, if it goes to a landfill or it goes to an organic material, it sort of regenerates and makes the soil better. But there are some examples of it, and we'll discuss it shortly. But the idea is really to think in terms of what are the products that we're using. And next slide, I'll quickly take you through, and I think you'll have to click a couple of times. Yeah. So this is a very complicated diagram. What we'll do is we'll put you, we'll give you a link after the session. This is known as the butterfly diagram on circular economy. Essentially, every product is made of organic materials and inorganic materials. So there are cycles. What we as humans in the past 20-30 years we have done is we have mixed up both these cycles. Ideally, whatever we receive from Mother Earth needs to go back to Mother Earth, needs to go back to nature, and whatever technical cycles, any machinery, any gadgets that we're making should be reused and recycled to make fresh gadgets. What we have done is, like if you're making a t-shirt, we are making a shirt, we are mixing it with polyester or, like some sort of inorganic materials that makes it extremely difficult to sort of, like put it either in organic material or to reuse it. So this is the diagram which sort of shows you that if it's on the left side, if it's an organic material, then it needs to just go back into loops, and like ideally there should be no landfills. And if it's a technical cycle, if it's a computer or a mobile phone, then ideally you need to sort of repair it, you need to maintain it, refurbish it, recycle it. Most of the times you see, like people say, okay, but this is recyclable. But most of the products that are recyclable are not recycled also. Even if they're recycled, does not mean that they come back to our ecosystem, like as recycled products. I have never seen a product that says this is made from recycled products. What I see is this could be recycled, but God knows who's really recycling it currently. So that is the problem that we are currently facing. Next slide, please. And essentially what we would today in our session would sort of work around 3 pillars of circular economy. The first thing is, can we design out waste and pollution? So what if we think of any product, and in this case coffee, can we think of a product line which does not have any waste or does not create any pollution, both in its use as well as its after use phase? The second is, can we keep materials and products in use at all times and that they are not lying, dormant? And the third is, how do we regenerate natural system? And this is the key point, is something that we would discuss in our session today. Good. I'm looking forward now to Shalini, to just take us through why we decided on coffee and what are key, insights that we could gather in past 2 or 3 months. Thank you.
Thanks, Piyush. So, long story short, when Piyush and I, we were discussing different ideas on, say, what could be circular solutions that we could bring in, which were relevant in the Indian context. We started looking at different material flows, and we started looking at, different kinds of innovations, circular innovations, which were being found overseas as well as in India, and we realized that there was a lot of opportunity in the coffee market, just because of the high value as well as India's position. From a global standpoint, I think these numbers speak for itself, right? There's about 9 million tons of ground coffee, which is practically brewed every year, and 18 million tons of wet waste coffee grounds, which is generated because of that globally. And that's keeping any other byproduct aside. I mean, despite the coffee market, like any other agricultural commodity market, facing real challenges because of climate change and export challenges, for example, because of the pandemic, or even labor when it comes to harvesting, coffee has actually remained one of the most vibrant marketplaces, especially when it comes to commodities. And from what market analysts say, supermarkets or hypermarkets really look like they're going to be the biggest sales channel when it comes to coffee, even in the coming years. And that would closely be followed by traditional grocery stores. Probably moving a little closer home to the Indian context. And we know that, especially whoever in the audience is from the South, we know that practically a lot, like Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, a bunch of southern states attach a lot of identity or part of local culture to coffee, the way coffee is made, where it is consumed. I would say, most of us, it would be a part of our morning and evening ritual, right? But India has predominantly been a tea consumption-oriented country, but then coffee consumption has been on the rise. And while it is no surprise that South India really leads that, and Tamil Nadu accounts for about 60% of it, if you look at, say, how much coffee consumption has, say, grown year on year in the Indian context, it's been about 5% year on year over the last 5 years, over the last 20 years, I'm sorry, which really shows the kind of potential that's there, right? And as mentioned here, about 120,000 tons of coffee is actually consumed every year in India. So that's the market side of things, right? But what if we put our sustainability lens on? And this is where I think the kind of studies that Piyush and I were going through with our basic research while understanding more about the space around coffee was it was an eye opener, because we realized that when it comes to general waste that's going into a landfill, coffee is actually one of the biggest contributors when it comes to emissions around methane, and which is actually 25 times more dangerous and more potent than carbon dioxide, which is the more conventionally known, greenhouse gas, among common folk. And if you actually look at, there was a very interesting study that I also came across, where if you look at, say, Brazil and Vietnam and the way that they cultivate and consume coffee, Brazil and Vietnam are probably a notch higher when it comes to quantity of coffee produced as well as consumed. There was a fascinating study that showed that if they actually modified the way coffee was grown, transported, as well as consumed, they could actually cut down carbon emissions to the tune of 77%, which is a fairly staggering number. And as mentioned, if you look at even, say, almost on par, probably half that of beef when it comes to carbon footprint. And we realize that even in terms of commonplace knowledge in the Indian society, right? Like what we do at home is when we brew our filter coffee, we keep the spent grounds and we put that for plants. And I didn't know that, while I've just seen other people do that and I've seen folks at home do it, it's actually a very contentious issue on whether we can actually use, the jury's really out there when it comes to whether coffee grounds can actually be used for plants or not. While there was an article that came out of a study that was done by professors at University of Hawaii recently, where they said that coffee grounds actually helped, or coffee waste helped in the regeneration of forests. There have also been articles that have come out which have shown that when coffee is actually put, you really need, it really matters what's the soil content, existing soil content, as well as the plants for which the spent coffee grounds are being added to, and it can actually be detrimental in a lot of cases if we dispose spent coffee grounds for plants in the form of manure. So we realized that the story is quite complex, and but all said and done, there is actually a lot of potential when it comes to seeing what are the different kinds of byproducts and how those could be used. And when we started looking at global examples of what can really be done, we were fascinated by just the diversity that was there, right? So in terms of innovators, we saw right from product designers to food manufacturers to automobile companies who had come up with different kinds of partnerships, even global agri-businesses who were looking at, for example, looking at using spent coffee grounds as a superfood in a slightly different processed form. And we realized that the use cases are actually very diverse, very varied, and have significant potential. I'm just going to leave this slide here for a couple of seconds, just for you to see the diversity that we kind of came across with our initial research. And this has spread across, hubs of innovation right across East Asia to the United Kingdom, Portugal, as well as other pockets of innovation in Europe. This was another fascinating part for us. So while the innovations that you saw in the previous slide were only restricted to coffee grounds, we realized that there is so much more potential when you even look at byproducts that are there before consumption, that is as part of the cultivation as well as the processing stages. And when we did our initial research and we looked at a lot of academic articles, we realized that pigments and byproducts which were generated and substances from that had a lot of use cases which go well beyond, ranging right from paper to cosmetics to mushroom cultivation to furniture to wine. And a lot of organizations, a lot of innovators across the world had really started this off, and some of them have actually been doing very well and have even been supported by corporate as well as government investors. Coming back to the Indian context, one thing we realized was why were a lot of these innovations kind of concentrated towards say East Asia or Europe. We realized that I think over the last few years, when it comes to either policy incentives or even say market incentives, the government as well as corporate players in these locations were able to bring out the right kind of incentives to foster innovation, as well as support some of these innovations to really, for these innovations to happen, as well as taking some of these pilot experiments out to field. Just to give you an example of what we've seen, for example, in the UK, as of late last year, I think £22.5 million worth of funding has actually been sanctioned by the UK government to see how industry waste can actually be converted into environmental wins, and they've been heavily investing into R&D institutions for the same. China, for example, this was close to 12 years ago, actually came up with a circular economy protection law where they were looking at facilitating circular economy and particularly innovations around this space, and supporting innovators as well as organizations who needed support in terms of taking their innovations to the market. Sweden, for example, has really looked at tax breaks for organizations which are able to undertake repair activities and see if reused components can be brought back into the value chain or used as inputs in other value chains. But in the Indian context, unfortunately, while we've had certain measures which have come out, these have really been in silos and haven't really had an end-to-end value chain or a systemic approach. And we realized that in the absence of having the right mix of policy and market incentives and an established value chain, so we realized that there are a lot of people who are generating coffee wastes and are interested in piloting some of these ideas. But the first question that that was posed to us when we put forth the idea was, where are the market partners for this? Are you going to bring those market partners to me? Because I don't have the bandwidth, or I don't have the capacity, or even the knowledge to arrange for these market partners. partners, even if I were to invest in something like this. So what are the 3 priorities we're really looking at as part of the Coffee Miners pilot that Piyush and I, on behalf of the Circular Collective, are really looking at? So we're looking at building more awareness on the value of coffee waste and byproducts, showcasing diverse use cases and innovations, both at a global level as well as at a local level, and bringing together like-minded individuals who could range from product designers, coffee enthusiasts, innovation enthusiasts, or even sustainability enthusiasts, to see if we can ideate and innovate and find different ways that we could actually put our heads together to try and see if there is a way where we could reuse some of these and really push the needle when it comes to creating value out of the coffee value chain, which goes well beyond our morning cuppa. So with that, what do we really expect in the session going forward? So we've kind of set a broader context with what Who Feeds Bangalore, Edible Issues, and the Circular Collective have been doing, and why did we really come about organizing this session. What we want to use this session for, and what we think would be important for you to take away from this would be exploring and mapping opportunities for bringing coffee to the coffee value, circularity to the coffee value chain. Hear from budding innovators like Rahul, Khushbu, as well as Pallav on the opportunities and their respective journeys when it came to developing products and upcycling coffee, as well as in our respective breakout rooms, try and exchange ideas to see, what are the different ways that we could actually look at reusing some of these wastes and byproducts and come up with the most outlandish, wild ideas, as wild as they can be, to see, how can we really take that forward. So with that, we will move to hearing a first-hand account from our innovators.
Awesome. That was really great, Piyush and Shalini. Thanks for setting that context. At this point, we're just gonna hear from 3 of our speakers, like Shalini mentioned. And like I said earlier, the idea is for us to get some inspiration, some sort of ideas from the work that they're already doing, from the experiences they've had, the research they've done, and their learnings. So I'm going to hand over first to Chef Rahul Sharma. Rahul is the head chef at Araku Coffee's Experience Center that's recently opened up in Bangalore. He's designed their menu not just to sort of pair with the coffees that Araku grows and serves, but also to look at how byproducts from the coffee value chain can sort of find their place within their food menu. One of the things that I got a chance to try recently at the cafe was these really great cascara cherry bonbons that he made. So over to you, Rahul.
Hi guys, myself Rahul. I'm working with Araku Coffee right now. The whole Araku Coffee right now. The whole idea with the company being into coffee had been, my journey started with basically first going and visiting what the company is doing in Araku and the kind of regenerative agriculture that the company has been promoting in the valley. Working with the tribals in getting a good income source for them was the first priority when the company was started. When it came to the menu, the idea was always to live up to that par and also incorporate those kind of culture into the food system that we are trying to promote at the cafe. So one of the biggest things was always the cascara that we saw at the processing unit in Araku, and this is what we came up with. It was basically, so the idea was always to make the diner feel that there could be a circular thing when he's having a cup of coffee. So if we can create a kind of, say, a coffee ritual which comes on the side, which could connect everything together. So the beans are used to brew your coffee, while the cascara is used to get these bonbons, and it becomes like a zero waste cup every time you order a coffee. So that was the idea at which we started. But then being in this, we always had a lot of coffee grounds which are generally thrown away. The idea was, how can we use them into a motion that it becomes interesting for the diner also, and how a byproduct also becomes a part of the system. We started using the coffee grounds into a soft serve. We have a really cool soft serve machine at the cafe, which we're working on. We started using these coffee grounds, infusing them into a soft serve, which is led to infuse overnight, and the next day we churn it into the machine, and it becomes a side thing. Whenever you order an avocado, you always get a choice of either getting a wet chewed milk soft serve, which is basically a soft serve from a special cow, a very native cow coming from Kerala, made from that cow's milk. Or you can choose from a leftover coffee ground soft serve, which comes along with an espresso. So it becomes interesting for people. Also, there are a lot of other things that we started working upon. We started working on a roast chicken dish, and the idea was always to get how can coffee be a part of a regular savory dish also. Then basically, I'm very inspired and love Marmite in a way. So the idea was, can there be something that you can extract from coffee and use in that particular sense? So we started making a yeast extract in which we started infusing these coffee grounds and with a chicken stock and a chicken fat emulsion, which turned out to be a glaze which we brush on top of the roast chicken. So it doesn't get those coffee tastes, but I think it gets a lot of flavor in terms of those coffee aromas which come when the chicken is roasting. And that's how we came up with the Coffee Mite glaze, which we use on our chicken. We started calling it Coffee Mite. And it becomes very interesting and becomes again a talking point with the diners and make them understand how you can do all these things. And it again is very easy, and it's just that you need to be like, just maybe think outside the box and think how can this byproduct be a product again.
That sounds really cool, Rahul. Two questions. Elizabeth is asking, can you tell us what the Cascara bonbons taste like for someone who's not familiar with what Cascara tastes like?
So I think the whole idea of using the Cascara basically started on my visit to Araku. So we have this particular SKU which is called a micro lot. So micro lot is basically comes from a specific region in Araku, which is basically an island right on the border of Andhra Pradesh and Orissa. And maybe because of this particular terroir of the region, that the coffee Cascara is very sweet. It is so sweet that basically the Brix, if you check on a refractometer, the Brix level shows somewhere around 22. So that was the point, because I was so hungry when I was there on that island that I just started plucking coffee beans and started munching on them. And I was like, why is it so sweet? Like, obviously I was not chewing on the beans. I was just throwing away the beans, and these became like a snack on that island. And the idea was, if these are so sweet, why can't they end up into the coffee system? And that's how I started talking to a coffeologist, like, what exactly happens with these? And he's like, these are completely thrown away. These are the byproduct. And that's how we started working on that. And it tastes really amazing because of the sugar level. It's naturally so sweet. So we don't have to add a lot of sugar in it. We make basically infuse them into chocolate. And then again, Araku, when we were going around on rice, there's a lot of millet which grows around in the valley, which is basically a staple for the locals and the tribal people around in that area. So what we do is basically we coat the outside of these bonbons with puffed amaranth seeds and millet seeds, sorry. And it gets a really cool texture outside. And then whatever Cascara we have, since we had a lot of Cascara, so we thought, like, let's also dry this out. And all the Cascara which comes from micro lot is dried and powdered and is basically like sprinkled outside. So again, it gets another sweeter note. It doesn't taste very heavy on coffee though, but it gets those fruity taste. The fresh Cascara is blended inside. So when you bite, you get chunks of Cascara in your mouth, which is good in a manner because it adds fiber to your diet. And it also has natural sweetness. So it is in a way very healthy for your guts, very healthy for your body because it has fiber.
Nice. If if any of you are in Bangalore, I definitely would say, like, if you get a chance, go try it out at the Araku Cafe. It's really, really nice. There's one question here. So at this point, we just want to hear a little bit from each of the speakers. So we won't get too much in detail with questions. We can sort of have those conversations in the breakout room later. And we would also sort of encourage you to maybe connect with each other. We're going to put a form out at the end where you could drop your contacts if you would like to be able for other participants to reach out to you and have conversations and take these things forward. But there's just one interesting question here in the chat box that I would like to ask you, Rahul, from Arshia of Black Panther Coffee. She's asking, she would like to understand the scale of the problem versus the scale of the solution. So like, do you think that things like these, like using these byproducts, like making your coffee mug and these bonbons, do you think that these are solutions that can be scaled up to look at the volumes of these byproducts that are made in the coffee value chain as a whole?
I don't know if bonbon can be a solution to all the wastage of coffee, since coffee is the second most highly traded commodity in the world, and that too right after petroleum. I don't know what kind of scaling we need to do in that, but this could be a start of a thing that we understand that there is a solution for that particular wastage. There is a kind of solution that maybe we can find together. Maybe we can have at a very smaller scale. Like for us, even we are not able to use all the cascara that we make with Araku coffee, but this has given us a hope. This has given us a light, a direction, maybe that this could be a direction. Maybe it could be the next thing could be that drying it out, drying the entire batch of cascaras maybe a few years down the line and using that as a gluten-free flour substitute. Maybe that could be a good substitute.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so like she says, this is a question for everyone who's here. So if you guys have any thoughts, people who are listening in, people who are part of the meetup and conversation as well, if you have any thoughts, you could drop them into the chat as well. So thanks so much, Rahul, for sharing what you've been up to with this. At this point, I would like to pass on the conversation to Khushbu Gandhi. Khushbu enjoys being a nature guide, understanding cultural connections and trying new hands-on skills. She's trained in sustainable material design, packaging design, and circular design thinking. She's the founder of Go Do Good, a studio working at the interface of science, design thinking, sustainability to create new materials, packaging, and conduct workshops. She focuses on adding value to industry and agro-waste streams by developing alternative resources. She has a collaborative research-based experimental practice whose work with used coffee grounds explores the connection between sustainability, food byproducts, and the definition of waste by identifying key properties. So thereby adding value to an accessible raw material by exploring applications in different sectors ranging from sustainable packaging to antibacterial coating. Khushbu, handing over the mic to you now to share a little bit about your work in this space. I think you're still on mute, Khushbu. There, yeah, thanks.
Yeah, okay, sorry. I hope I'm audible. The internet sometimes gets a little sketchy at my end, so if that's the case, just like let me know and I'll try and re-say whatever would have been missed out. But so basically, I've done this research almost 2 years ago. Like I've done it between 2018 and 19, so I don't have a lot of samples because luckily and thankfully most of them have biodegraded, but I have only these two left. So these are the gelatin ones and they've also shrunk quite a bit, but like these are the only two left with me. But I have put up a short presentation that I would like to take all of you guys through. Just 1 second. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can see your presentation.
Okay. Said this was back in 2018-19. It's something that I started working with while I was actually working as a part-time barista at a cafe in Barcelona called Collioure Cafe. And so I've always been a coffee lover. The way it started was back at home, like we used to make scrubs out of it, use it as a fertilizer, or do something with it. I mean, I know it's not the best thing, but however, like, you know, we found a ways, because at home you don't have that much waste of it. And I was under the cafeterias or like the barista people would be doing something with it, like, you know, would be like probably be giving it to someone else or like sending it as a resource to a place. But turns out when I started working with them, I actually realized, hello? Okay.
Yeah.
Turns out when I asked it back, that they just, hello?
I think there's a bit of a disturbance, Khushbu. I think you've switched off your video, right? So maybe that might help. And if you could maybe talk a little bit slow so that we could catch up if we miss something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does that help?
Yeah, I think so. I think it does.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So yeah, basically when I was working with them as a part-time barista, I realized that like all of the coffee ground that we had would end up going in as organic waste. And I mean, I wouldn't know where it would end up, but from whatever I'd heard, it was like ending up in the nearby landfill. Which is why that time I was working on a bunch of other bioplastics. And I was just like, you know, why not try making like a bioplastic with this? Because I'd heard a couple of other companies also tried, based in Amsterdam and like Germany and a couple of other countries as well. So I was like, you know, let me try my hand at it as well. While I was, so this is a snapshot from the experiments I've done. I based it on like multiple different starches, glues, binders. Out of all of this, I think the gelatin one that I just showed right now before I started presenting was the most promising one. But that's the one which is not biodegraded in 2 years. So these all have biodegraded, and like those boxes have been empty now. But I realized that when I did this, it was a nice experiment for me. I sort of didn't understand the material really closely, but I wasn't really using any properties that, you know, the used coffee ground has. So like it could have been a great alternative for plastic, but I don't think so if it would be like the best use for used coffee per se, when I was trying to make bioplastics out of it. So the next stage that I took up was like, you know, to try and probably see how, like, what are the different properties that used coffee grounds possesses, and like try and like harp on any of them, or like, you know, see what else can be done. So this was one aspect, and like this is where I got into more of the research stage rather than like just looking at it from a material exploration point of view. So I realized that used coffee grounds as a material has a lot of different uses. And I was like, the thought process was very similar to how we see like cocoa peats, especially like, you know, cocoa peat pots and things like that, where like the end product is actually because of the properties that dry coconut fibers actually have, which is why like, you know, cocoa peat or like a cocoa peat pot makes sense. And something similar which I had seen in remote villages in and around Rajasthan as well was they use sand to clean the utensils. And while I'd asked like a small boy, like, you know, why are you using sand to clean utensils? Because I'd never seen this. They were like, you know, it's not very freely available for us to get soap or like for us to go and buy something like this. And sand actually becomes a very good cleaner because it helps in like cleaning the dirt or like, you know, whatever the leftover food is. And at the same time, it also helps in adding like this little polish to it, because then it has like that rough texture to it, which was quite interesting because like you get that all over Rajasthan, and to, you know, sort of just use it and, you know, not really dirty, but like put it back into its natural form was quite interesting and like a very local thing as well. So thinking of those things, I realized that, you know, like probably like a few different things that we could try with used coffee grounds would be to like, try and use its different properties. So used coffee grounds does have like a lot of absorption. So like, creating filters for like different industries can be like really beneficial, because it can also be very cost efficient. So that is something, which can be really interesting. And at the same time, because it has like a lot of abrasive qualities, like it can be very well used for polishing, for grinding, for like making like textures really smooth, or like, adding a particular finish to it. Again, like these all, it's not like there aren't solutions in the market to these problems, but I think from a cost and an efficiency point of view, I feel like, used coffee grounds could be like a really good fit. And then when we try and look, I mean, if you shift from like the mechanical properties to more of like the chemical properties, there's also like this entire antibacterial feel, or like, the fact that, it can actually like repel a lot of like insects, or like, ants and like bites, things like that. It can very much be created as a end product, keeping those properties in mind. So this is something which I found was, quite interesting to sort of probably like take the research further and see if something could be done with one of these properties. Sadly, it was more of like a research project for me, which I was trying out like just out of curiosity. So I did not take any of these particular routes further, but like I've been interested in like seeing how can you like, really move forward if you had to with one of them. So this was one aspect of it. And then of course, like, the curious mind wants to know more about it. So then it was like, oh, if this is only the waste generated with like the used coffee, there'll be like a whole different like ball game of like, that goes behind, like, before the coffee even reaches like a cafeteria. So that's when, that's when like I started, like I wanted to understand the coffee plantation system and how it happens, and like different stages that are involved where, when it comes to a coffee plantation. So like if we actually look at the anatomy of a coffee cherry, you have like your pulp and like your like the mucilage and the parchment and the silver skin, which probably makes as much amount as like a coffee bean. So it's like a 50-50% thing. So if you're getting like an X amount of coffee bean, you'll get the same X amount of waste as well, which would be quite interesting to understand, because as of now, like even how the left mentioned, it goes into waste. So like, having like perishable solutions for it, or to try and like, put it back in the food system, or like, to try and like have multiple uses, because if it's the second most commodity in the world, I'm sure like, one particular byproduct can have like, multiple ways of us looking and using it as a resource. So while perishable is one item, can we also like, look at like reusing it as maybe in the same coffee system, probably as cups, or like, as your sustainable packaging, or your takeaway, your straws and things like that. I think there's an Australia-based company called as Husky, if I'm not mistaken, which is doing it or is in the process of doing it. But I think it's interesting for like, more people like us to, get into it. So whether we look at the wet process, the dry process, or like, even like local processes like your Malabar monsoon or your honey, you still have like a certain amount of waste which you can put back in the same coffee production system as well, even if you don't want to extend to like another sector. And then keeping these two aspects aside, you still have wastewater, which is like a very big issue. So there's a factor to it, but like, what really happens to the wastewater is like, it's very questionable, because there needs to be a solution. It's the same as how handmade paper is made. Like the wastewater is something which nobody really questions at the end. So can we use the same used coffee to sort of filter it and then see if, the BOD and the COD levels can be managed? It's more of like a hypothetical thing, but like it's something which probably does need a little more attention when, when you're looking at the overall system. And then towards the end, like the two things that we figured that, in the future, when we do want to work on this a little more again, like these two will be like the two interesting things to look at. So like when we're looking at used coffee grounds, how do we like try and make it more like a starburst system rather than a linear system, where it becomes more like a service where, like every cent, because like the biggest problem when you want to think about this is collection of the coffee ground, right? So if we can figure a solution as to if we can have like city wise or like area wise collection centers, and like if we, different sectors or different like people working with or use coffee ground as a material can access that, then that in itself becomes a very big help, because at this point anyone who wants to start into this collection is like the first thing that they think about, but like, from where am I going to get my raw material? And then from a back end or like from a plantation point of view, I think reusing it as like takeaway coffee cups would be like pretty interesting as well from a non-perishable point of view, and sort of tying it back to like, working with like a local manufacturing units or like, directly with coffee plantations or like coffee brands could be like a good way to sum up everything together. And yes, I think, yep, that's about it. I am going to stop sharing my screen.
That was really,
Have my
really,
video
really
back.
interesting, Khushbu. And especially cool that you shared your learnings and potential spaces for like further exploration. Hopefully that's something we can sort of riff off of in the breakout rooms as well. So thanks for that.
Okay.
And it was really great to have some visual references as well. So that was awesome. So now I'm going to ask Pallav to share a little bit about his work. Pallav Patodia is the co-founder of a company called Sansthan Green Tech, which is developing a tableware product from coffee ground waste. He has a background in BCom and chartered accountancy by training, and has worked in investment banking for 4 years before he decided to quit that field and start working on this product and this project. The project is currently in product development stage, and they're hoping to launch the product sometime towards mid of 2021. So hopefully that will be soon. We'll be able to see some of that. So Pallav, over to you.
Thank you so much, Shivani. Hello, everyone. I'm really glad to be here among you guys to talk about one thing that currently, dominates my life, which is spent coffee grounds. So yeah, like I told you, my name is Pallav Patodia, and I'm the co-founder of a company called Sansthan Green Tech. And what we are doing is basically we are developing a tableware product which is made almost entirely of spent coffee grounds. When I say almost entirely, it means that approximately 80% of the whole product is actually going to be spent coffee grounds. The word sansadhan in our company means resource, which means a source which can, from which you can generate some kind of benefit or utility. And that has been our philosophy from beginning, to generate utility from something which we generally consider waste. And the first product that we are working with is spent coffee grounds. So I have a very initial prototype that we made during our research, and I would like to show you that. So this is one of the plates that we made, and it is made from spent coffee grounds. So although this is one of the very initial prototypes that we have made, and there is still a lot of research that has to go into it to bring it to the market. But yeah, so giving you a little background of how I came about working in this field is, so basically I'm from a very small town called Jhunjhunu. I've from Rajasthan. I've grown up there. I've done my schooling there, and like Shivani told you that I have a BCom and a chartered accountancy background. I have done 3 years of my life's work in a big four firms, accounting firm, and then 4 years into investment banking. And during that last year of my job is when I, being a traditional Marwadi, I thought, why not get into entrepreneurship and do something of my own. And the one thing that I wanted to start with and came to my mind is basically waste management, and that's where I started. I was very much inspired by our Prime Minister's Swachh Bharat mission, and my biggest motivation was basically the garbage I saw around when I came to Mumbai, those overflowing bins and all. So that's when I thought, I'll start in waste management. And during my research, I met a lot of cool people who were doing a lot of fantastic work into waste management. And I met a lot of people, and that's when I came about the fact that the coffee that we drink, all that spent coffee ground is going to waste, because there is almost next to nothing that is being done with that spent coffee ground. except a few being used as fertilizer in very, very small quantity. So we thought, let's start doing something with this product, and that's when we started developing basically this tableware or crockery product. Um, and I realized this very early in my life, that if you really want to solve a issue, then you have to try to find a way to make money from it. So yeah, that's when I started working with coffee grounds and trying to develop a business model around it, and we started developing this product. Um, now currently we are, like I told you, currently we are still in development phase, and we started this company like 6 months back, and we have come a long way since then, and we are hopeful that we'll come up with the product to bring to the market by mid of this year. Um, so the current market that we see for our product, basically the product that we are developing is going to sit in the premium tableware category, where your regular ceramics and bone china sit right now. Um, so that's why what we wanted to do is take something which is going to waste and develop a really very, very premium product, which goes on to prove that a lot of good can be done if you put enough mind and heart into it. So that's our plan, basically, is to develop a good premium tableware product. The few features that we envisage is going to be in our product is compared to your ceramic and bone china, is that it's going to be unbreakable. Even if you, let's say, if you throw it from a height of 6 feet, it won't break. It is going to be microwave safe. It is going to be dishwasher safe. It is, of course, going to be food safe. I mean, that is given. But yeah, I mean, this is something that we are trying to do. Yeah, in the market that we see in the premium tableware segment, currently the market size is roughly $1 billion. Of course, that was pre-pandemic. But once we start to open up, and I'm sure that again this market will start seeing some growth. The main challenge that we face, I mean, there are a couple of players who are doing something with spent coffee ground to develop like coffee mugs, like Khushbu mentioned the Husky cup from Australia, and there is another company from Germany which is also making coffee cups and saucers from spent coffee grounds. But what we are trying to do differently is basically increase the content of spent coffee ground in our product to its maximum limit, and trying to create another a product which if you compare with your existing tableware, you won't find any difference in terms of how it looks. In fact, it's going to look even better, in my opinion. So that was the idea, is that people should use it because of the product, not because of the fact that it is made from coffee grounds, or it is being recycled. It's a recycled product. So that was the main idea. And the main challenge also is exactly that, to develop a product um, which looks premium and is usable as well. And going forward, what we envisage is this. I mean, this is just one of the first products that we are developing, but it can have multiple applications in our life. For example, what we have thought so far is basically your, like, vases that you use for flowers in your home, your spoon holders, pen holders, a lot of furniture item, a lot of decorative items that can be made using this technology that we are developing. I mean, really, sky is the limit. It depends on what we can think of. So yeah, I mean, that was a little background about myself and the product that I'm developing currently right now. If you have anything that you wanted to ask me, any of you, please let me know.
That sounded really cool, and the plate looked really cool. Do you think you could hold it up once
Yes.
more for us to see?
Here.
Nice. That sounds really, really interesting. So thank you so much for sharing that, and also, what the market space looks like for an innovation like this. So at this point, what would be really cool to do is for us to move over into the Miro board. So the idea, like we mentioned earlier, is to hear from these speakers and get our thoughts flowing. There's a bunch of questions and conversations that are happening already in the chat. So maybe these are things that could fuel our conversation in the breakout room. So at this point, I just want to direct everyone to the Miro board. I'm going to share my screen, but we're also dropping a link to it in the chat. And so if you have a Miro account, or if you've taken the time to sign up, then you can explore the board as well. So I'm just going to share my screen. So yeah, what we've got over here on this sort of virtual whiteboard is a bunch of different things for this evening. There is this diagram over here that I hope everyone's able to see this screen that I'm sharing.
Yes.
Just awesome. Okay. So there's a little bit of a diagram of the anatomy of a coffee bean, coffee cherry that Khushbu also spoke about. There is one infographic here that's looking at sort of the entire value chain of coffee from sort of farm to cup. And this is something that we've put together a little bit in advance that we were mentioning earlier as well. So this is a bit of a closer look at the coffee value chain that we have. To give you an idea of what we've got going on here, this row entirely is activities that happen along the value chain. So on the field, we have growing, picking, processing, milling. In the roastery, we have roasting, packaging, shipping, and finally in the cup, we have grinding, brewing, and drinking. So these are some of the major activities that we've identified along the value chain. Here, these little dots that you see look at the different stakeholders that are involved at each of these points within the process. And there's a key over here for you to take a look at, how many people are potentially involved at which point. And then under that, we're looking at what's left behind. So, from the milling process, we spoke about husks and silver skins. From the processing segment, we looked at cascara and pulp, and also spoke about water that's used in sort of processing the coffee cherries, and so on. So you can take a look at this. And finally, there are examples of innovations from each of these byproducts that already exist. So similar to the use cases that we just heard that are within India and closer to home, these are use cases of innovations and products that are either being tested right now or are already out there in the market in the world, using different parts of these byproducts. At this point, I want to tell you guys that we would love for you to sort of add to this if you feel like we've missed out on any interesting byproducts or interesting use case scenarios or any other insights. Like there are little blurbs of insights here at each point. So the orange post-its are what we've used to identify the byproducts from the coffee plant itself, whether it's pruned leaves or pruned cherries or spent grounds or anything in between. And the purple ones are other byproducts, like the water that comes out of the processing, or the single-use packaging material that goes into packaging and shipping coffee around the country, or disposable straws and cups and that kind of stuff. So feel free to use these post-its and add stuff along the value chain as well. And take your time. This Miro board, there's a link to this, so you can continue to look at it for a while after our conversation as well, and see all of the moving parts that are on there. And right at the bottom, we have a little bit of a space for the kinds of wild ideas that we might come up with through the breakout room session that we're going to get into now. So if you guys have any questions about this frame of the board that I've just shown you, we could do that for a couple of minutes before I walk you guys through what we'll do in the breakout activity.